So this is what my palette looks like. You can see I have some space in between each of the colors. I also have some water. You're going to see it straight up because I have the camera set up above above my paper here. So some water, and also important to have some paper towels. Use them a lot for dripping and use them a lot for making sure there's not too much water on your brush. Okay, and next I'm going to talk about brushes. There's a couple of different brushes that you see available here. First one is a flat brush. I have two different kinds. You would have one that was given to you along with your paint supplies. A flat brush is very good for blending colors and doing what's called a gradient fill. So that's going to be in our blending section on our tutorial work paper. I'm going to show you how to blend the colors together, and a flat brush is best for that. It carries a lot of paint, and you can also, very smoothly blend things back and forth when you're blending two colors together. Here's a smaller version of a flat brush that you also have in your paint kit or in your supplies. You would have also received a round brush. Round brush looks something like this. Again, it is just, it's good for doing a lot of detail and so forth. You would have received two sizes of a round brush. Something like this and this. One can be very fine and the other one will have a little bit of a bigger brush. And then this is what's called a filbert brush. This brush is very good for going around in circles. I'll give you a quick demonstration of that. Where you can flatten your brush a little bit and you can create a really, really beautiful curve as you use your filbert brush. And we'll explain a little bit more about that as we go along in the tutorial as well. So those are the different types of brushes that you have. Okay, so the first section is going to be blending. I'm going to blend and do a gradient fill in my blending section. I'm going to work with the red and with the yellow. So I want red at the top and yellow at the bottom. So the way I do this is I first dip my brush in the water and then just make sure I get all the excess water out of it by gently just pushing it across the side. I might dip it on the paper towel for a minute to be sure that I don't have too much water. And then I'm going to dip into the red, both sides of my brush. And you'll see I have about this much paint on the brush. Notice I don't go all the way to the top when I dip the paint in there, just in the bottom little section. It would be good to put a piece of newspaper underneath so you can completely go back and forth and go off the edge without worrying about going into onto the table or whatever. So you'll see I'm starting here, and notice that I think my brush is a little bit too dry. It's not really covering as well as it should. Again, I'm just going to dip, get rid of the excess water, blot it a little bit, and then bring it through. So with a gradient fill, it is very important to make sure that you are just moving back and forth in the same direction. In my case, I've chosen a horizontal direction, and I'm just filling up the top 1/3 with the top solid color. So the top 1/3 with the color. My paints are a bit of a different type of paint than yours, and I think that they might be a bit thicker than yours. So that also could be why it's not covering completely. So top 1/3 with my first color. Then I clean out my brush well, swish, swish, swish it around. Make sure I'm getting all the red paint out of it. And when I'm fully sure that the red paint is out, I blot it onto the paper towel to make sure that the red paint is truly off of it. You see there's a little bit of red left, so I'm gonna do it one more time. And then I'm going to move into my yellow color. So again, going to dip into the yellow color, both sides of my brush. And now I'm starting at the bottom. And I'm just going to blend back and forth with the bottom color, right? So yellow doesn't always cover completely as well as red does. Also makes a difference as to what paint you are using. Some colors have more opaquency. That means that they cover better than other colors. So you might need to just wait for it to dry for a minute and give it a quick second coat. The next step is to blend the two colors. So I'm going to take a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow on my brush, and I'm actually just blending them on my brush right now and moving them back and forth. Basically bringing the red down into the yellow And then a little bit more yellow on my brush, bringing the, or sorry, a bit more red on my brush and bringing the red back up into this red part. And you can see how I'm getting a little bit of a gradient blend going back and forth. Now I notice that I need a little bit more yellow at the bottom, so I'm cleaning off my brush, moving into the yellow, and then just putting some on the bottom here. And you can just blend back and forth until you're satisfied with your blending. You're pushing the yellow up into the red and the red down into the yellow. This is your typical type of sunset sky that you would use. Yeah, so finish it off something like this. And as soon as you're content with it and everything is covered, then that finishes off that section. The next section is wet on wet. Got some nice clean water here, you can see. And I'm going to use the same brush, and I'm just going to brush in some wet paint or some wet water obviously, water onto my block in here. Notice I'm getting a little bit of the yellow and red over from the other side because I wasn't super careful with that. So basically, this is a watercolor technique, but you can also use an acrylic paint. You wet your surface and make it wet enough so it's not puddly, but that you can see that everything's been covered. Okay. And then you want to take a nice wet brush, dip a little bit into the paint. So in this case, I'm going to try the blue paint here. And I'm just going to kind of dip it in. And you can see I get a really nice soft type of a finish. The paint likes to go everywhere. What I might do at the same time is clean off my brush a little bit. And maybe I'm going to mix a little bit of the blue with the yellow, which you of course know makes green. And I'm just going to throw a little bit of the green in here as well, or a bit of the yellow. And I can do this right actually right into the actual, onto the paper. I can do all three colors. Probably a better paintbrush to use for this would be your round brush, this one here. Maybe I'll dip some straight up yellow. Again, I'm going to make it a bit wetter so it dips in nice. And I'm just going to dip it in the bottom here and have it kind of spread through. And it should turn kind of green as it goes through. It's a neat technique. It's interesting because it creates a very soft finish, almost like a great background, and then you can go back in there, you can do different things with it. So you can see there's a lot of water in some of these areas. Another thing that you can do is take your paper towel and just lift your paper slightly so the water drips to the corner. Put your paper towel in the corner there and see it just kind of absorbs it all. So I might want to do that just to get rid of a little bit of the water that's left in here. I put a lot of water in here. And as it keeps drying, it will keep turning. Now, okay, so this is working really well on my piece of paper because I actually have a I have a paper that's meant for paint. You may not have that at home. And if you don't, that's totally okay. It might not mix the same way. You might get some weird results. Doesn't really matter what it looks like in this case. This is just simply so we can understand the different techniques. So don't worry too much if it's not turning out as mine has. You can see I have a bit of an advantage to you because I do have a paper that works well for painting at my house. And you can see also I just blotted some water in my blending area. So I'm just going to blot it out with some paper towel. And oh, interesting. So I've lifted some of the paint out as I've blotted it in that area of the blended. Kind of neat. That could almost be a neat technique to use as well when necessary. You can see that the paint just lifts right off if you put some water on it. So play around with some of those different things. Okay, so I want to mix a little bit of paint. I want to kind of make a pink color. So I took a little bit of that red and I put it separately. And now I'm going to lift out a little bit of the white. And I'm going to put it separately as well. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make a pinky color. So I'm going to lift out some of my white and put it together over here. Got a little bit of red. When you mix colors, oh sorry, you can't see that. When you mix colors, you always mix the darker color into the lighter color. Okay, always, always, always darker into the lighter. Think this through. If I'm mixing a dark red into a white, I can control how dark it gets. If I take the white and put it in a blob of red, it would take forever. It would take a lot of paint to get the light pink color. So this seems like a pretty good color. I think I'm going to use this for the next exercise because I want to show you two different things with it. All right, so mix yourself two colors, doesn't matter which ones.